Welcome to day 2 of the UW Systems Sustainability Annual Meeting. For those who don't know me, my name is Brad Spanbar. I'm the Campus Sustainability Director at UW-Oshkosh. I think there are mostly familiar faces or names on here, or at least we probably ran into each other yesterday. Just a little kind of breakdown of how yesterday went. Yesterday was largely a working group day, so we got working group updates. We had some working group time for discussion, and then we spent the afternoon sort of taking feedback from working groups and the things we've been doing over the last year, and we were able to connect with some representatives from UW System, Alex Rowe and Pete Davis. And I thought that went really well. I mean, do other folks, we've got a little bit of time before we really need to get started. And I've just got a couple more sort of announcements things, but how are folks feeling about yesterday? I thought that went really well. And I want to just say props and kudos to Kate for really facilitating and getting that session going, because I think that was a long overdue conversation.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I guess it's just good to have that dialogue with the larger group. And even though we were recording it, and that usually will put people obviously a lot more on guard, I think it was still pretty fruitful and, kept it real. I thought it was a pretty honest conversation about what we needed, what they were able to do, and kind of what the reality looked like. So I was pretty happy with it. Good step forward.
The first 10 minutes were worth the whole thing. Hearing Alex talk about what they want from us and what they will accept from us. So again, great session, Kate. Thanks.
I thought it was helpful to understand better where they're coming from. I do think there's a next step that's required, and that's with the DFD folks. And maybe, Maria can help us with that. It seems like that organization, needs a fire lit underneath it, and I'm not sure how that can happen. I think, as per some of the other discussions regarding things like a position at system and that kind of stuff, I think getting our respective administration leadership in our campuses to be supportive is probably going to be required. And each of us has a slightly different dynamic with that. So I think, I don't know, it's my opinion anyway, that until we get the DFD folks on board and supportive and not just open to discussion, we'll still have a tough time actually making substantial changes. So, but it absolutely was a helpful conversation. Good to understand where both Alex and Peter are coming from. So I thought it was great. Very, very, very good use of time.
Yeah, to echo Rex's comment, I mean, I thought, that to have Maria speak first and then really to have Alex kind of respond to her and seem like they, sort of recognize like, oh, we need to be talking more, we need to be communicating, was like, wow, this is good. Yeah, it's right to make that connection. But Tony, yeah, I mean, I guess what I sort of took away from it was, and I don't know that there was anyone sort of shifting blame or anything like that, but it seemed to be like DFD is kind of the place where some stuff needs to happen. And then certainly, Board of Regents. Those were kind of two things that I felt like really kept coming up between us in conversation. I was like, okay, this is where, and it sounds like in some ways things are shifting and changing, right? I mean, she sort of said the board is one board now and it is becoming another board. But yeah, so I thought it was really fruitful. and a great first step. And I know the wheels are in motion for us to come back together soon and talk about what's next. Awesome. Well, just a little debrief on today. So we're spending our first hour and a half doing campus updates. And hopefully campus leads or primaries receive those questions. So instead of kind of doing the normal rundown, we'll move through the campuses in alphabetical order as we normally would. But we'll ask you to kind of address those 3 questions. And then we'll be taking a little bit of a break. So we're gonna give everybody some time to kind of decompress. So we're having our break networking time from 10:30 to 11. We'll be coming back together at 11 for our keynote towards an equitable and resilient urban forest with Dr. Carly Zeter, who earned her PhD from UW-Madison and is now at Concordia University in Montreal. Then we're going to take a break for lunch, and then we will come back and do kind of wrap up for the day with our last session talking about energy dashboards. And that'll be, somewhat informal, but just kind of hearing from folks. What have you used? What have your experiences been? Can we kind of run through the different types of energy dashboards or kind of data management platforms, talk about pros, cons, etc. Questions, comments? All right. We're a couple minutes ahead, but I think we can, and yes, thank you, Wes, for putting the campus updates prompts questions into the chat for those who may want to reference them. So I think we should switch over to campus updates. Let's start hearing from folks and kind of hear how your year has been going, things you've been working on. This also provides an opportunity for new folks to the UW system sustainability realm, students or faculty or other folks who may not regularly join us on monthly calls and might not kind of know what's going on. This gives us a little bit of an opportunity to hear what's been going on across the state on all of our campuses.
Yeah, I was going to add real quick, Brad, a brief introduction for anyone who is relatively new, and basically anyone who's going to represent your campuses, just to get an idea of who you are, because there's going to be a few new reporters, I think, in the list here.
Absolutely, yes. New folks should introduce themselves, and welcome. We're excited to have you. All right. So we are going to start with campus updates from UW-Eau Claire.
Well, I guess that'll be me. I am Brian Drawlinger, for any of you that don't know me. And as an introduction, I'm about 5'10". I like walks on the beach. No, I guess I don't need to do that. I started here in this position as Director of Risk Management, Safety, and Sustainability back in February of this year. So I've only been in this position 8 or 9 months, whatever it's been now. Before that, I was up in facilities doing some building coordination and things like that. So I've been with the university for about 3 years. I was hired to do risk management and safety. And some of you might know Vice Chancellor Cricket. Grace Cricket came from Whitewater. She's been here at University of Eau Claire now for a little over a year as well. But she was a big advocate, as Wes might know, of sustainability. So she thought this would be a perfect opportunity, since they haven't really had a department or an administrative department for sustainability at Eau Claire at all. And so that kind of leads me into the first question on some of the accomplishments here over the last year or so, is that being one of them, is that we actually have an administrative type department for sustainability now. I have myself and then 2 graduate assistants. I believe they're on the call today. But they were hired on in June and have been doing a great job getting trained in sustainability, but also to really promote it, really collaborate with our student organizations and try to get the word out with, through administration and throughout campus. So that's one of the things. The other thing I wanted to mention was that previously we had a task force that came up with recommendations for the chancellor on future initiatives, things like that. And so in those recommendations was to create an advisory council for the chancellor. And so that was also created recently, the beginning of this semester. And so now we have, well, Tony's on it as well, but there's, I don't know how many, maybe 15-ish of us on there, including faculty, staff, administration, grounds, just, you know, a bunch of different people. And so I think that's going to be really beneficial going forward, having that team kind of lead the way and make recommendations and keep administration involved. So that's kind of for answering the first question. The second one is, let's see here, project initiative. So one thing I wanted to promote is our Blue Box. And what that is our closed loop technology, sustainability, reusable dining container. So I know Madison does it through OSI, but basically it's some other campuses probably do something similar, but we haven't here at this location. So we are going to be implementing that soon. Basically a container to reuse in dining instead of the one-time use plates and things like that we toss away and they fill the landfills. So we're in the process. We actually just got all the containers this week. And so we're hoping to roll that out here right after Thanksgiving. And so we'll be getting media, promotion, education, everything like that out to staff, faculty, and students. So that's kind of cool. We got other initiatives as well that we're looking at. And of course, Tony's been involved with a lot of this, so he's going to be pushing a lot of things as well. But that's just one initiative that we're doing currently. And then finally, the third one, third question, anything challenging? My guess is this might come up a couple other campuses, but the education and importance, making sure that it's a priority for the campus, but for the system as well and the state. So just making sure everyone's on board, trying to get the communication out to include administration, getting system, state, community, everyone involved. So that's kind of been, I'm guessing, difficult or challenge in the past. So that's what I'm hoping to really work on here as we go forward. So that's Eau Claire.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. And I think you were exactly 5 minutes. So that's great. All right. We are going to, I just want to mention too, we'll have time at the end for we should have time at the end for discussion and questions. So if folks want to come back and ask, we can connect on topics. I know I'd love to kind of talk about the OZ situation and reusable containers in dining. Next up for campus updates is UW Green Bay.
Hello, hello. I think I can share my screen here. Got some slides. So first, just hello, everyone. Many of you I've met on the calls already, but I've been at UWGB for about 2.5 months now. I'm the new sustainability coordinator. I guess a little background. You know, I came from Maryland, spent most of my life there. And I was working as a sustainability coordinator for the past 3 years at a small liberal arts college, Goucher College, just north of Baltimore. So excited to be here. I think my colleague John Arndt would say an accomplishment was just getting this position created and filled. It's a new role. So we've shared updates on the monthly calls, but my first main task is completing our STARS report, hoping to wrap that up in the next few weeks or month, get that in by the end of the year. And so that's kind of given me a crash course in what's going on at UWGB and where the opportunities are to build and grow what we're doing. So trying to live up to that EcoU name that we have. But just wanted to highlight a couple things based on the questions that were provided. One accomplishment besides me starting was the green teacher badge, which will get a rename. But the program launched at the beginning of this year, and we've had 23 faculty participate, essentially filling out a survey with information about sort of their sustainable practices in the classroom, both from a kind of functional standpoint of what practices they're putting into place, but also from an education and advocacy kind of standpoint of what things they're modeling in the classroom. So that's exciting to see, and hopefully we'll see that grow. One of the things we're working on is an SDG launch program. This is through the Foundation for Environmental Stewardship. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but our sustainability committee has been talking to this group. They've got a program kind of pre-packaged with pre-event video modules, the launch event itself, which has various elements, kind of a introduction with the founder, a seminar on kind of how the SDGs are related to local issues, and then an action plan development workshop. I'm trying to translate that a little bit. They've also got a lot of resources. So there's a UN speaker series that's ongoing, and they also have some resource libraries. I'm particularly excited about some of the library resources. What they shared was they have, videos and resources of how the SDGs, how sustainability can be infused into each discipline. So I think that'll be an exciting resource to share with faculty, particularly faculty who maybe departments that haven't incorporated a sustainability course yet. So that's something we're working on for the spring. One of the challenges, aside from just, re-engaging with students post-COVID, is, with the reopening of campus, we're seeing our composting output increase. And so last year, you can see the numbers here. We're doubling what we're going through that kind of shipping container. So, they're emptying it weekly. That finished pile of compost, or that compost pile, has to go elsewhere to finish. And then we're trying to figure out who to distribute it to, how, because we got a lot of finished compost coming through. So any ideas are welcome. Hopefully I'll be talking to, there's a local business that just started for residential compost pickup. So hopefully we might be able to work something out as well. But that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniela, and welcome to System. I know you've been on the calls, but yeah, we're looking forward to working with you.
Same.
All right. Next, I have on my list UW-La Crosse. Do we have a rep from UW-La Crosse here with us today?
The person that I was told was gonna do the updates is not on the call, so
Okay.
We may come back.
Okay, we can do that. All right. Then next up, the big boss, UW-Madison.
All right. Jake, are you going to give me co-host ability so I can share?
Yep, you have sharing ability.
I do already. Okay, sounds good. Let me, oops, get it going just a sec. Hi, everybody. I'm Nathan Yondel. I am the Assistant Director at the Office of Sustainability at UW-Madison. Can you see my PowerPoint? Cool. And only my PowerPoint. Good. All right. So I will launch right in. You all, I think, are probably quite familiar with UW-Madison. Founded in 1848, of course, on Ho-Chunk ancestral land. They had been there for many thousands of years beforehand. And the picture on the right actually is from the other day when the university flew the Ho-Chunk flag for the first time on Bascom Hill. So you have the American flag, the Wisconsin flag, and the Ho-Chunk flag. Perhaps those should be inverted in size as well as order. So we have a large student enrollment, over 45,000, quite a few faculty and staff, and an enormous number of living alumni, over 450,000. You know, a large campus, but also quite a bit of acreage outside the main campus, and you know, 27 million square feet across these 400 plus buildings. So sustainability interventions are you know, take a lot of money, take a lot of time, and often bring us a lot of complexity. Our office has grown considerably in the last few years, and we are an interesting kind of bi-divisional structure. So we have a director of sustainability, institutional director, Missy Nergard, who's on the call. And we also have a director of sustainability education and research, Professor Andrea Hicks, who's in the engineering department and who helps to run our education, or who leads our education and research kind of efforts within sustainability. So between Missy and Andrea, we report kind of dually up to the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration and the Provost. And we try to take seriously that dual structure in terms of the work that we do. And you can see here that we have a pretty good range of kind of specialties amongst our staff, from energy, data analysis and waste to you know, student focused folks like Ian working on our Green Fund and Tim working on our student intern program, and so forth. We also have a couple of PhD students working with us, and Associate Professor Ann Turlock, who advises us on the sustainability certificate offered by the Nelson Institute. So I'm going to keep it pretty quick. We have this slide here with things you can kind of skim through, and I certainly won't talk through them all, but just to kind of answer the questions. We are working on a bunch of stuff right now. I think when it comes to things you might not know about, one really interesting project that we have is we're sponsoring climate change research who's for a PhD student, Gasong. I will go back and point her out. She's right in the middle there, right below Travis. And she's working with two leading climate researchers, Dan Vimont and Tracy Holloway. Sorry, didn't mean to go back there. And she's basically looking to apply future climate models to populate current ASHRAE building standards. So instead of building buildings that are based on historic climate models, we're looking forward and trying to build them, or at least her research would suggest that we should build them to accommodate future climate models in the Midwest. So it's really fascinating work. In terms of something that we're proud of, I would say one thing that I'm proud of that we've done recently is become designated as a Fair Trade University. You've already heard about this, I think, in this meeting. And after this session, if anyone has questions, I will point them directly to Jake McCullough, because he was the man who championed this and worked with some really important groups on campus to make it happen. And of course, there's a lot of other things going on in terms of student outreach, really trying to make sure that social justice is incorporated into the work that we do, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and more. And so those pieces are also really important to us. In terms of challenges, you know, the prompt kind of asked us to pick out one thing that you may not know about. I'm not sure how many people know that we have had pretty substantial leadership turnover, or we're having substantial leadership turnover at UW-Madison. So 3 people, our Associate Vice Chancellor in Facilities, the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, our chancellor now, Rebecca Blank, and of course, we all know about the UW system president as being interim. So I think that's a pretty interesting challenge for us. I also would phrase it as an opportunity, and I'm hoping that we're going to be trying to be as involved as possible in the leadership recruitment process, and I really hope that we can bring in some people who see the value of sustainability. And I will keep it quick, and so I'm all set. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. All right, next on the list, let's hear campus update from UW Milwaukee.
All right, thanks, Brad. Kate Nelson, Chief Sustainability Officer at UWM, and I'm joined by John Gardner and Laura Stevens here on the call. I really want to mention them, especially because I think our accomplishments have come in the way our staff have stepped up. It's been a really rough year. We lost 2 staff members in the late spring. Everybody's been filling in. A special kudos to Laura Stevens for keeping a lot of the ship running. We also had a student who graduated that we made an LTE, Nina. I don't know if she's joining the call. She has been an amazing asset in our office, filling in just about everywhere, really, learning to drive a box truck and all sorts of things. And that really is, all of this is connected to our accomplishment in, sorry, I have my heater running, I bet you can hear that. We have become very much an operations unit just as much as we are a planning unit on campus. And that has been a major shift. And we are always at the surplus department, but taking on internalizing our recycling hauling, just it was a bigger bite than I think we realized in a culture shift. And so we've been kind of working our way through that. And I don't think it's always been easy for any of us, but I think we're coming through it now. We've got some new hires that are coming on to be some salvation. But I must just say, Laura launched the new recycling program early in 2020. And of course, we all know what happened. And she was inundated from the start with how monumental the task was, but we are running really strong. Our contracts are proving resilient. We have major cost controls in place that are really helping us. We were able to buy all new outside bins for 1/4 of campus from Maxar that are really nice, that are increasing recycling outside because of the savings. We bale our own cardboard, more savings. I just feel like we really have a strong handle against this very difficult market in the waste markets. And I really think it's really more of a 2-year kind of thing, but I'm really seeing the success of what we did. And I hope that personally we all kind of make it through, because it's been pretty rough, but I think we all see the light at the end of the tunnel on that one. Project or initiative currently working on is going well. I think I can say this is going well, and many of you do know this. John and I have been working on our climate action carbon and resilience plan. And again, a major kudos to John. We have really picked up on the online tools for planning, and just what a major learning curve to shift from working with 90 people on campus and in the community to online, and being able to not really skip a beat. So we are at the place where our leadership, our governance groups, and the advisory team is reviewing that plan, and we hope to have full endorsement. We're going to move it through all the governance groups this spring. So maybe still a little bit of fingers crossed, because there's there's some big reality hitting people in this process. But I just, major kudos to how much we've brought together the whole campus. A lot of DEI initiatives on campus were made part of this, although they could always be more and deeper. Just really proud of where we've gotten to, and finally having a draft plan that we can move forward. And the one thing finding challenging, our journey with renewable energy has been exhausting, and we have really run up every channel we can with on-site, evaluating the utility tariffs that are here to such an extensive means. John and I, our knowledge of the energy markets is never what I imagined I would have to have. And in fact, at times even sitting down with the Public Service Commission because of the nature of things. And now we have, as many of you know, the virtual power purchase agreement. We went through the RFP process, and system has not signed the contract yet. So UWM is getting a little bit feisty, are a little bit exhausted in this process, but we are fighting really hard. And I appreciate all of you coming along with us, because I think we're better as one. And that's kind of my salvation at this point, is that we're all doing it together. So always stay tuned on that, but I would definitely say that has been our biggest challenge. So thanks for the time.
Thanks, Kate. We appreciate it. All right, up next is UW-Oshkosh, and I guess that means that's me. One accomplishment that I think we're pretty proud of, and some of you probably know about this, but some of you may not, is our energy innovation grant that we got through the Public Service Commission through the last round. So EIGP is currently open now, as some of you may know. But for last year's submission, we got a grant to fund a project to connect our on-campus dry anaerobic digester to our campus services building, which is like immediately adjacent. So that's going to allow us to directly funnel heat from the digestion facility into that building, which is going to reduce, we're super stoked, reduce our scope 1 emissions, get us off natural gas in that building, save us $25,000 a year. You know, it's good stuff. So we're pretty pumped about that. One project or initiative that I think is going well, and I was actually kind of heartened to hear Chancellor sort of, you know, give me some props, because I've been really trying to make this happen for UW-Oshkosh, is what I guess I'm just going to call getting into spaces that matter. And I think folks maybe can realize or kind of relate, you know, oftentimes I think sustainability is left out of conversations, or maybe doesn't get into the spaces that't you know, particularly in these kind of areas of higher ed. And so I have been pushing, and so we're going through a strategic planning process. We've made a couple of presentations to our strategic planning committee. I will now, and Stephanie Spahar, who is our director of our Sustainability Institute, we will be attending monthly meetings with the Chancellor's Cabinet, which has never happened before. I mean, really, we've always kind of had to beg to even just get in once a year to talk with them. We're starting to just plan and get into some strategic planning spaces with enrollment, partially within facilities. So I'm feeling really, really hopeful and good about that we're getting into these spaces to make some significant strides. One area that I'm finding challenging, or one thing that I'm sort of finding challenging, and again, I think folks can relate, is working on our access campuses, or our 2-year campuses that merged with the 4-year. So there's 2 UW Fox Cities, I think it was formerly Fox Valley, and then UW Fond du Lac, that are now part of the UW-Oshkosh system. And it's just hard to get to those campuses, to spend some time. They are facilities that are technically owned by the counties. And so that creates, you know, some sort of differences in how facilities and planning and funding and all of that stuff works. And so it's also trying to coordinate with our facility staff to, you know, make sure that sustainability is being kept in mind when they work with the county folks. I think there are lots of opportunities there. You know, I see, as Nathan said, you know, it's a challenge, but I think there's also really good opportunity. But part of it just comes down to time and ability to get into those spaces and think about sustainability on the 2-year campuses associated with our 4-year. So that's my update. All right, UW, do we have Parkside on the call?
No, not to my knowledge.
All right, then we're gonna move on to UW Platteville. Let's hear your campus update.
Yeah, this has been it's like my year has been so far a Charles Dickens novel. It's been the best of times, it's been the worst of times. one accomplishment that I'm personally super, super proud of is this summer, me and the land stewardship crew, we were able to grow over 1,500 pounds of produce for the Pioneer Pantry, which really was amazing. If you want to up your weights, grow lots of potatoes. It really tips the balance. A project that we're currently working on actually is a repeat from last year. Last spring, we were able to burn prairies on campus for the first, in one particular area. The faculty in charge of that burn said that it probably had been 150 years since there'd been fire on the ground there. So we've just started preliminary conversations about reburning some of those initial burned units and then adding some, which is really, really exciting. The only hairy part was when we set a buried junction box on fire that no one knew was there, and we kind of stood and screamed and waved our arms, but then facilities came on their white stallion and put out the fire, and nothing burned down, and we were safe. But watching the students who were in the 2 burn classes working on this work those fires was really, really awesome. And there was a lot of fuel in some of those places, so it was very dramatic, and I'm really excited that we're looking forward to doing it again next year. There's a couple of things that I'm finding challenging, as probably most of you know, because you were in conversations up until a month ago. We had Amy, the sustainability coordinator, here, and she has left. And so that's hard, because 2 or 3 weeks before she left, Josh Chamberlain, who was our waste minimization coordinator, he left to take the position, sustainability coordinator position at University of Dubuque. So a great step up for him, but very sad for me, because then when Amy left, so it's just me here. So staffing the positions or position is clearly a challenge. And to date, I still don't know what's going to happen. The other challenge that I'm going to have is, and Daniela, I'm in the same boat with you. I'm being asked to do the STARS report by myself, which I've assisted in the past, but I've never done it on my own. So we're going to find out if I can make that happen. But I know it's doable, because there's that wonderful, wonderful work group that, has all those resources and smart people who've been to this rodeo before. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the next 12 months are going to be very productive. I'm hopeful. I'm in a wait and see mode right now, but just going to keep my head down and keep doing what I'm doing and hope for the best. Oh, one more thing. You do probably know about this, and this is a call out, one call out for Amy and one call out for Josh. In the spring of 2021, Amy was the leader to get UW Platteville campus a 2.4 megawatt non-distributed solar array on campus, which should be going online now, but I haven't heard of a firm start date, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the biggest. I just heard that I was going to do updates yesterday, so I wasn't able to gather all the data. It's big, it's beautiful. I can't wait till it's pulling juice. It's very exciting. So that was Amy's big, huge accomplishment. For Josh, on Earth Day, through Josh's efforts and the students he was working with, the Chancellor Shields committed UW Platteville to zero waste by 2035. So that is just totally awesome. The students were juiced to the max. So I'm hopeful that by 2035, we're going to be zero waste and that our power bills will be much less than they are now. That's all I have.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mary. And yeah, you should definitely feel free to reach out to any and all on this call, because we're happy to support you. Yeah, the STARS group really threw together an awesome set of resources over the last couple of years. And I know that stuff's been helpful to us at UW-Oshkosh. So yeah, we are here to be your resource.
You'll be my guides. My crutches as I hobble through. Thanks, I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. All right, carrying on. Next campus update is from UW-River Falls.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Klopach-Mathias, and I work for UW-River Falls as a sustainability and custodial supervisor. So one thing that we are super proud of this last year is that our students passed a green fund. So we now have a student segregated fee to support sustainability efforts on campus. It's $5 per student per semester, which gives us an approximate $45,000 based on our enrollment for this year. For a little bit of context, my annual budget outside of my salary has been $2,500 to do everything sustainability. That entire budget was cut last year and this year due to campus budget situations. So the Green Fund is the only piece that really has given me sanity. It's allowed me to hire student employees. We have 10 students this year. They are doing a wonderful job. 6 of them have started in the last 2 weeks. So it's been a bit to get them all onboarded and going. We've had students previous years, but it's hit or miss with grant funding or other things every single year. So the Green Fund will really allow us to have consistency, which is the dream. One project or initiative that we're currently working on is we're currently working on our Sustainable Campus Community Plan. So this is our strategic plan for sustainability on campus. Our previous plan was approved in 2012, and by 2014, the entire sustainability department had been eliminated, and there were no resources or anything that followed it. So we've been doing a lot of planning and networking and advocacy over the years. UW-River Falls has approved an academic plan and a strategic plan where sustainability are key elements in both of those. In fact, with the strategic plan, sustainability is one of the 4 goals, and that was just approved on Wednesday. So it's pretty exciting that we are getting that going. So our Sustainable Campus Community Plan will really now figure out how we can support those documents and how we can help build a stronger network and culture of sustainability across campus. So over the next really 3-4 months, we're going to be pretty heavy into revising that plan. We are just coming off completing our STARS report that we did this summer. So now we have a pretty good updated metrics for what we want to move forward with. So we're pretty excited to update that plan, as it will have been 10 years since it was first created, and again, out of date after probably 2 of those years. So we're excited to get that back in place. One of the things that I find challenging is just our sustainability structure on campus. Some of that's our reporting processes reporting structure with who we report through. So for a little bit of context on the budget piece, again, I said our annual budget is $2,500. There is a faculty group that works on sustainability in the curriculum. Their annual budget is $7,500 for curriculum, and then mine's $2,500 for everything else. So we work great together. I don't want to disparage them at all. I'm very thankful that they're there, and they do support some of our efforts with their funding and things as well. But with our current reporting structure, we often have, well, we have a few key people on campus that have the mindset that sustainability is a bonus. So that's pretty limiting when we've been very, very short-staffed. In terms of the Green Fund, I was flat out told at one point to not support students in that effort, that they'll have to figure it out. That's not really why I work on a college campus. So we just work through that, and I am stubborn and I'll deal with the repercussions as I need to. But that's actually our mentality on campus right now with a few people. I don't want to say everybody. And then the other piece of that is with me reporting, or with me overseeing custodial, as it's been alluded to by several people, we are short-staffed on the custodial side. We've had 2 vacancies since April. We've got 2 more vacancies coming up due to people having surgeries and things. So at least half to 2/3 of the days this semester, I've covered a custodial shift before I start the rest of my workday. So they get the very basics those days, but that's 2 to 3 hours a day that I'm being pulled from. So it's great that we've been able to hire students, but just our structure is very limiting. We have a new chancellor on campus. We now see sustainability in our academic plan and strategic plan. But what I've been saying to everybody during that whole process, during all the stakeholder engagement sessions, is that can't be, we want to be more sustainable. Mark, here you go. We need to figure out how we're institutionalizing sustainability and making that culture. So despite all of those challenges, I'm actually pretty optimistic these days. We've made some good progress and it's looking good, but really my reporting structure needs to change if we're going to have a larger impact and not have as much burnout. So another piece of that, we had somebody that was laid off due to budget cuts last academic year. It ultimately turned into a retirement, but that person was in charge of our surplus program. I had supported that from an administrative function previously. Now I'm fully in charge of surplus as well. So on top of custodial and sustainability, I'm the one doing all of our surplus online auctions and things. And while student employees can help with some of that, it's just too much. So that's definitely our biggest challenge. And for those of you that have been around several years, you've heard me probably say this challenge every year. Again, I am somewhat optimistic that it will get better here at some point. But really my last point that I want to highlight is Violet Penman is on this call and she's a student in our office. She's serving as a student manager this year to help oversee the rest of the student interns and employees. And she is single-handedly why I have any level of sanity. That being said, she's graduating in December. I've been desperately trying to create a position for her or something. So if anybody has positions coming up, Violet is phenomenal and I would give her a glowing recommendation. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Mark, it doesn't sound like you're very busy over in River Falls. Do you need something to do? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm good.
No, that yeah, that sounds like a major challenge, and I think a lot of folks can relate when things sort of just keep getting handed down and right, Wes, other duties as assigned. All right, next campus update is UWStevens Point.
Hello, my name is Abby Krieger. I'm a student here at UWSP and I'm a junior. So this is my third year with our Office of Sustainability. Dave, who most of you know, is our sustainability coordinator, and then the rest of our office is made up of me and 3 other student employees. So some of our accomplishments that we've been proud of in the past year are a couple of our events. We had a really successful Earth Week 2021, and we had a really successful Great Apple Crunch in the last couple of months with a lot of student engagement, spreading the word of sustainability on our campus. We also hosted the UMax conference. We submitted our STARS report. We got that done. And we expanded our compost program in the residence halls. And so a couple of our current projects that are going well is planning for our winter events. We are really trying to expand our collaboration on campus with as many different departments as possible, people who we normally wouldn't collaborate with. So that's been really fun to come up with ideas for. And then our free stores on campus, the backpack and the closet, which are home goods, office supplies, and then clothes. So those are free for any student who needs them. So we've been doing a couple of events to get the word out on those more and working on kind of restructuring our organization of those. And then a couple of our challenges that we've been facing is decarbonizing our new library building, which will begin construction in the next couple of years or so, trying to really push sustainability on that front. And then also integrating our branch campuses, as one of the other campuses also mentioned. We have 2 branch campuses, and we've been trying to really include them in our sustainability efforts. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Abby. We appreciate the update. All right, next campus update is UWStout.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Wright. I'm a graduate student in the Sustainable Management Program. I think I'm having some connection issues, so I'm sorry if I cut in and out. One accomplishment that we are proud of would be the solar panels added to Price Commons. Thanks to $150,000 in student green fees, 122 solar panels and infrastructure were recently added on top of Price Commons this past summer, joining the 32 panels already on the building since 2017. These new panels generate 400 watts each compared to the 330 for the original panels. And with these new panels, enough energy will be generated on an average per day equivalent to the electricity needed to power 6 average to large size family homes. The 122 new panels will generate about 60,000 kilowatts of electricity each year. When we eventually add solar to the whole rooftop, we'll be close to 40% of the building's energy. And as we keep making the building more energy efficient with LED lighting and new hood vents in our cafeteria kitchen, solar energy will make up an even greater percentage of the building's total electricity. Currently, about 25% of the Price Commons roof is covered with solar panels. For one project or initiative that we are currently working on that is going well is our work with UW System Travel. UWStout students Abrina and myself have been working with UW System Travel on creating some sustainable travel content and resources for the UW Travel website. We have accomplished a sustainable travel pledge, training materials, and a sustainable travel checklist. All this can be found on the UW Systems Sustainable Travel webpage, and I'll put that link in the chat once I'm done. And we also are currently working on some carbon offset research. With this collaboration, UWStout is working on creating some social media content. This content will have sustainable travel tips for students, faculty, and staff to be posted around high travel times, such as holiday breaks. We're proud of this collaboration with UW System because we are helping UW System collect data, drive traffic to their website, and it has translated benefits for UWStout sustainable travel initiatives that we have outlined in our campus's 5-year transportation plan. Lastly, one thing that we're finding challenging is our EV chargers implementation. The EV chargers have been funded for our Sorensen Hall parking lot location on campus and are planned to be installed this spring. Challenges this project will face include getting our parking pay stations to communicate with the ChargePoint system software. This could be a hurdle because the two softwares could be significantly different. I think that wraps up Stout's campus update. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. All right, next we have UW Superior.
Morning, everybody. I'm Dusty Johnson. I'm the Director of Facilities Management. We are still one of the lagging campuses, or the only lagging campus that still doesn't have a sustainability person in place. So I kind of wear a few hats, like Wes had talked about yesterday. So I take care of Director of Facilities, Campus Planner, and Project Manager. So we have sustainability on that as well. So I apologize for not being as active as I'd like to be in the group here, but hopefully that can change as time goes along here. Probably one of the accomplishments, being we are facilities related on a lot of this stuff, is our lighting project. We changed out between fixtures and bulbs, 5,213 either fixtures or bulbs over the summer on campus between 6 different buildings. So pretty huge lighting project. It went really, really well. So far we've had 2 complaints. And those were people that didn't want to come into their offices anyway from home. So far it's been really good. People have really liked the, I think a lot of people have said that a lot of the internal spaces, it feels more like they've got natural light. So hopefully we see some good energy savings and, the calculations are correct for the project. Another project that we're working on that we're really excited about is we've got a 1 megawatt solar array that we're planning on for next summer. We finally got the project moving forward, and it finally has some legs. So that project, we are hoping by the end of fall that we will have that up and running next year. So that's going to be tied directly into our main switchgear for campus. So all of that power goes directly to all of campus, which is going to be very helpful in our overall energy savings. So those are a couple of the big projects that we've got going on. A smaller one we did after COVID. Well, right before COVID, we had a few months of having a free store that we finally got opened up. And then that closed down during COVID. And now we finally got it back open again with a couple of students. So that's been great, getting that back up and going again. And then I'd say the biggest struggle is just getting somebody full-time, even part-time, into a sustainability position here on campus. I did try and pitch a part-time position here this last budget cycle, and it got shot down. So we're still shooting for trying to get students to get a green fee initiated and maybe get some seed money going so that we can get a position started even part-time. So that's kind of one of the biggest things. There's a lot of great things we'd love to get going on, and it's just really hard. We get some really fantastic students and then they graduate, which is awesome. But as all of you have dealt with, then you lose some really good people, and it's really hard to keep that momentum going. So, but thanks everybody, appreciate it. That's all our update.
Thanks, Dusty. We appreciate it. Yes, we recognize you have lots of hats to wear, so we appreciate you giving us your time and giving us your update. All right, last but certainly not least is UW Whitewater.
Thanks, Brad. All right, so I'm gonna try to answer this. I try to stick with a certain internal theme every time we do these updates, and I'm kind of focused a little bit more on some of our student affairs overlaps for our updates today. So we have other things kind of going on across operations and stuff like that, but you know, over the last year and a half, since COVID hit, the main focus in my mind has just been on student success and trying to keep people engaged in the campus in general. Then I can be part of the solution for enrollment and retention, and then they can keep me for a longer period of time. So one accomplishment that I am proud of, we've you know, done a lot of work on expanding our student employment program over the last couple of years. Ashley was really instrumental in getting our orientation materials put together and other support infrastructure for our students. Obviously, losing Ashley's support in that way last year was a big hit in several different areas, but nonetheless, I've been able to continue expanding our student employment program. As of right now, I'm up to 15 students working for me in some way. I got 3 reporting to me through the Warhawk Pantry, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and then 11 active right now, and another hire that I brought on, a freshman that I hired that I actually interviewed for the pantry and then liked her, so I wanted to keep her on in some capacity because she didn't make the cut for the pantry side. She's a freshman, so it's like my Jordan Love draft pick, basically, trying to draft for the future, get a intern that'll actually be around for more than a year is kind of the goal. So so I'm excited to get some younger students involved, as well as our normal complement of interns. We've divided our operations, or our intern program, into operations and engagement, basically right along the lines of stars. So one of the things that we noticed with the pandemic is that our interns were all working independently in their own bedrooms or offices and not really connecting with each other on a real deliberate way. So in order to kind of force that connection issue a little bit more, we basically gave 5 of them the same job description about operations, and they manage all of our remote locations, including the garden, greenhouse, pantry, and nature preserve. And then our engagement team is obviously in charge of more of the marketing and outreach and event planning. And there's 6 interns on there, and then now they'll be joined by a 7th. So I'm pretty happy with how things are going. There's always room for improvement, but we're trying to really kind of automate a lot of the processes, and especially on the operations side, where everything's pretty concrete on how you manage, you know, physical locations. We have really good systems and lists and things like that, so it kind of runs like a well-oiled machine. I walked in the greenhouse one day and 5 of them were all working. It kind of felt like I was Tyler Durden in Fight Club, where there's this hive of activity and I wasn't really directly controlling any of it, so that was pretty cool. So the project or initiative that I'm currently working on. The coordinator for the Warhawk Pantry, our on-campus food pantry, went on maternity leave starting in September. And I've been on the planning committee since the point, since we launched the pantry several years ago. And I'm pretty much the only one left on the planning committee at this point. So everyone else has gone or moved on. So I took over the coordinator role of the Warhawk Pantry and took advantage of that newfound responsibility by expanding our product line to include winter clothing and school supplies. I've been continuing to serve COVID care kits to students in need in our quarantine dorm. We're going to expand into a online ordering and pickup system for spring semester. I already mentioned I hired an extra student. So basically I just hired 2 students to start reporting to this woman coming back from maternity leave in a couple of weeks, and she's never met him, but hey, guess what? I got an extra student approved basically. And then the one we have now will graduate out in December. We're working on our inventory management system. So we created a new satellite pantry in the Pride Center in the University Center, and we're supporting another satellite pantry at our Rock County campus. So basically I did whatever I could to make her job as hard as possible when she comes back from maternity leave. And I think I've been pretty successful. So I'll see if my involvement in that continue, but it's been really rewarding and brings a lot of attention to our office because this is my in with student affairs. I can go, basically meet with people in the UC and really kind of have a connection with student affairs in a really direct and deliberate way through that pantry. The challenge, of course, is related to Ashley's departure and our engagement programs. I hadn't personally run engagement programs in our office for 2-3 years. And then obviously with COVID, engagement changed drastically. So when I came back around to hiring students for this semester, none of them had any experience running on-campus events. And I lost a lot of my experience by not doing it for quite a few years. So it's been a relearning process for all of us to kind of get our feet under the event planning process and really kind of, for me, relearn that aspect of my job that I was able to delegate off. And then for the students, just kind of getting comfortable with the engagement process again, like in-person physical engagement process when they're used to just everything being online. And I think they're embracing the experience, but we're still finding some resistance on our campus for participation in those types of events. So I think it's still been a bit of a struggle to bring students back around to events and get them going again. But as the semester has gone on, I've seen that kind of break down a little bit more, where people are a little bit more willing to come out of their shell and come outside and play with us. And we kicked off invasive species removal sessions this fall to help keep that volunteering going throughout the winter. So we'll go pull or cut and treat buckthorn and honeysuckle in our nature reserve. And I figure it'll probably take us about 25-30 years at the rate we're going to get all that buckthorn out of there. So it's a nice ample supply of a very sustainable volunteer opportunity out in the nature reserve. So I think that's all for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes. We have reached the end of our campus updates. So we can open it up to questions and discussion. I know I have lots of questions and have things I'd love to connect with folks on. The first thing I want to ask, did Parkside hop in? Or anyone else we missed? Any campus reps from campuses who we skipped over initially?
Actually, I think Andrew Erickson just joined, and this would be like completely ambushing him with this, but I believe he's from La Crosse, so maybe he just bailed once I said his name. Andrew, you out there somewhere?
I see him.
Oh, sweet.
Here. I'm sorry, I didn't catch all of that.
So we just did our round of campus updates, and we're circling back to any campuses that we missed on the first round. And guess what? UW La Crosse is up. So are you ready?
I suppose so. Just got off a physical chemistry exam, so feeling great. So I believe I'm sorry, I haven't really prepared too much. I didn't make a presentation or anything like that. Hope you all can.
You're basically just going to be responding to 3 questions, and I'll drop them in the chat.
I have the questions.
Okay, and then just going to give a brief introduction of who you are, talk a little bit about what's going on at La Crosse. It doesn't have to be anything real formal.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Andrew Erickson, he, him, his pronouns. I am a senior at La Crosse, chemistry major, environmental science focused. I always tell people that my major is secondary to the work I get to do on campus, specifically as the Green Fund coordinator and the co-chair of our joint committee on environmental sustainability. I enjoy that way more. So if I could just do that instead of going to physical chemistry and taking exams, I probably would. So I guess one accomplishment that I'm proud of is last year we implemented Aussie or OZ, I think they call it, machines in both our union and our main dining center. We did it in the middle of the pandemic, so a lot of things were moving around. But over time, we got some great use out of it, and actually, we mostly transitioned in our main dining hall last spring to the Aussie machine, and I think by the end of the year, we had 16,000 uses. And now, over the summer, our dining program just decided that we're going all in on this without even talking to our dining managers. And so now they're fully in on it, and we're getting really good use out of that. So that's great. And that was a student initiative. So I think it's the best. One project or initiative that I'm currently working on that's going well. We've been talking about increasing the amount of photovoltaic cells on campus for a long time. It's been like my main push towards administration over the last couple of years. And I think the climate on campus is finally changing. That's basically we have plans for our new science building. We have our first section, which is our lab building, but we are looking to get rid of our existing lecture science building and getting a new one. And they have plans to put up a pretty big photovoltaic array on that, and that'll be funded by the university. And also we're in the planning process of getting a new parking garage on campus. And we're also looking into getting solar on top of that as well. And then very recently, I've been talking with Dr. Bob Hetzel, who's our administration and finance vice chancellor. And we've decided that we're going to look into getting solar on our traditional res halls. So those older buildings built in the 50s and 60s that are just like bricks. They're old, and so they're all going through a revamping process, updating electrical systems, getting LED lights, and then doing some cosmetic stuff. And it's kind of the perfect time to add solar to that. So we're looking into that. Potentially that could be a student green fund / residence life project that may happen. And regardless if that happens, I think that photovoltaic cells are going to be much more prevalent at UWL in the future. And then I guess one thing that I find challenging, I guess to no surprise, it's that we don't have too much help from administration. Not to say that we're on our own, but students are kind of expected to do a lot of the legwork on top of their classes. And it has its benefits. It's a lot of fun. It gets more students involved, but it's also a little de-incentivizing to some to put in that extra work. But I hope that things are changing, and maybe in the near future, we can get a full-time or half-time position on our campus. Let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, that's what I got.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And thanks for kind of giving us your update on the spot kind of quick here. So we appreciate that. We've got about a half an hour. There was two things I wanted to mention, but we can certainly open it up to questions and discussion. The first thing I wanted to mention, and I know, Wes, you mentioned this yesterday, for folks who have not sort of written something up for campus updates, do you still want those within the next couple of weeks to put on the UW Systems Sustainability website, or are there plans afoot to maybe pivot and do something different, or should we just give you updates for the time being and we can get those on there just to give folks who are traffic to that page a kind of snapshot of what's going on.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the working group or everyone at large at this point. Not getting a ton of feedback on this idea, but the concept was basically that rather than focusing on our efforts on trying to collect these campus updates for the purposes of the profiles, we would maybe roll that kind of work into the impact reporting working group or aspect of the working group. If that continues, or if that ends up being rolled up under the system coordination group along with the annual meeting and communication stuff, one way or the other, I think it probably is worthwhile just to hold off so we can kind of reevaluate where we would want to include that information and how we would want to convey it. And I think it probably ends up getting kind of lost in the profiles. So long story short, if you haven't done it yet, don't worry about it. We'll get back to you. And if you did do it, thank you very much for your diligence and responsiveness.
We also have this session recorded too. So folks who need to go back or are curious to see what other campuses are doing, there's a way to have a record of that. Kind of in this same vein, one thing I wanted to mention, just as we were all talking and I'm hearing all of these like similarities of stuff going on, and something I'd be willing to lead as part of our monthly calls. And I'm going to put this link in the chat here. I think a lot of folks have already filled this out, but I'd be curious about having the campuses, and this could be campus primaries, this could be working group leads, this could be whoever oversees, would be to as part of each monthly call or sort of in advance of a monthly call, could we all share information around a topic area? And so I just shared a doc. It should be in the UW system shared Google Drive. So if you have access to that, you should be able to see this. But it's basically a list of all the campuses. And then there's a topic. So this one is on like climate action plans. Did you sign one of Second Nature's commitments? Which one?
Brad, just real quick, I did lift the viewing restrictions on it. So everyone with the link should be able to view it now. If you clicked on it before I did that, just refresh.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes. So my thought is, could we before each monthly call, and again, I'm happy to do this, I'll create a spreadsheet around a topic area. Maybe it's on fair trade, right? Are you fair trade certified? Yes or no? How did you go through that process? What sort of things did you do? Who do you work with? Maybe one's on composting, right? Do you have a compost program? Who do you work with? I think, I guess the value I see in this is I hear a lot of similarities. And I know in talking with folks like Kate and Amy, right? Sometimes if one school has sort of set a precedent, it sometimes helps other system schools to figure out ways to make things work on your campus. Is this something folks are interested in? Is this something folks would be willing to even just dump a little bit of information into or answer some questions ahead of a monthly call? And whether it leads to direct discussion in the call, maybe that's one way to tackle it, or maybe it's just a resource and you can say, oh, hey, La Crosse is doing it this way. I should connect with them. I heard a couple of folks are doing the Aussie program. The Aussie program has failed miserably at UW-Oshkosh, and I'd love to hear from other folks like how it's working at your campuses. I have some ideas. Basically, our dining folks are not doing it the way I think they're supposed to be doing it. But basically during COVID, we ordered 40,000 Aussie containers and we got 200 back. So where that 39,000 some containers went to, I think most of us can probably guess where those went to.
Fox River.
I think there's a thin green line in the Outagamie County landfill. Yeah, not great. But so I'd love to find a way to sort of assemble, get some information that campuses are sort of, if we're all in kind of the same category, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the Aussie program, but right, like, do you have a campus reusable program in your dining operation, right? What do you use? How does it work, et cetera?
I'll I'm going to jump in. I see other people on mute, but here I go, or off mute. So I was kind of thinking, just from a functional standpoint, Brad, we used to do this with Eileen. She would set up, I guess, what you would call like a matrix of accomplishments in different areas. And usually it was like a bunch of different projects across the top, and then more or less like a yes, no. Within one spreadsheet, you could obviously set up multiple tabs to kind of cover multiple different topic areas, and then we can kind of have it all in the same spot. And then we just revisit the same document over and over again, and we can keep it updated that way. So maybe the goal would be to create an assortment of different project areas. I think the Aussie programs, composting, I heard Katie talk a little bit about electric vehicle charging stations, and I'm right in the middle of all that right now too, for policies on campus. So, there's definitely going to be overlaps in a lot of different areas. And I think we can just kind of keep adding to that list, either based on what was said today or what people have feedback on as we kind of go along.
My thought would be, to just keep it all in maybe that same document that I just shared, rename it, and then every tab would be like a topic area or would be a project area, so that it's all in one spot. Folks can find it easily. You want to find dining reusable operations, you want to find EV charging information, see what other folks are doing, see how they answered the questions. Can we talk to each other and collaborate better? And I know, I see Missy put in the chat, can we talk about green funds next month? I know Missy had created, I think, a similar document a while ago, kind of covering that. So I'd love to, we could certainly circle back to that. I see Kate has her hand up, so I want to go to Kate.
Thanks, Brad. Just to put a little bit of a spin on this, and this is just to throw something out there. We have a few of you who have other jobs. We have Dusty, we have Brian, we have Mark. And I would just like to say, what do they need? What do they need the most help with? That might be like, we have the working groups that are pretty strong and going forward, but just to throw it out there, what are some other things that simply would serve the folks? Or like Andrew, you said, you're a student, and I've heard your comments before, like, why does this fall on students? I think I heard that yesterday too. So I just want to kind of like maybe throw that out as a little frame of reference in this conversation. And maybe like Brian or Dusty, you can speak to like, how do you do both jobs? How does that work? Or multiple jobs? And what do you need?
One day at a time. Just I think resources obviously is number one, but contacts for even my student grad assistants, maybe them being able to reach out more and being part of that monthly meeting would help. But I give them a bunch of different tasks because, like you said, I have other things and I'm trying to juggle a few things. But so maybe just additional communication for them with the rest of campuses would probably help a lot, I think. So getting them more involved, I guess, probably would help. So.
I appreciate the group when I'm able to get in with it. And I think this document would help a lot, so that if I miss meetings or when I do miss meetings, I can catch up on what everybody's been talking about. I know the minutes kind of do that some, but if we've got a document that has some resources on it, that would be great. I think the green fee is one of the things that probably could finally get us to the point where I could get another person involved in this. And so any information on that is huge. So that's great. Anything that I can access, kind of as I have time is really, really helpful and really appreciated. So, and you guys are all fighting a good battle in all of your campuses. So it's really good to hear what you're doing and what we can try to implement here as well. So.
And then that spreadsheet actually probably would help, because all I knew was that Madison was using OZ before. I didn't know other campuses were using it. So it would have been nice to know if we're going to lose 40,000 containers and see how we can tackle that before we started. But yeah, so yeah, that probably would be helpful.
So Brad, I had a quick question. I mean, I really like this idea. but how do we organize it, and how do we make sure it's used and it just doesn't go away? Because right now, like, this is very specific to a certain climate action plan. But when you start introducing all these other programs and basically project metrics, whether you're asking, do you do this program? If you do, tell us about that. Tell us your experience with a particular program. So you listed out like 5 programs. How does that get managed, and how do we use it effectively?
I haven't fully thought that out, but I think just, looking at like this first example of climate commitments and action plans, I guess, yeah, I would say, creating multiple sheets within one document, sort of as Wes laid out. I just think like setting up this structure so that folks know to use it. I think if we want to be intentional, we could make this a brief point in each of our monthly meetings. And like I said, just like every month, we'll create a new tab, or maybe it's every other month, or, like as we get to it, but at least a tab can be created, and we can just say, if you've got information about green funds, next month we're going to talk about green funds, and there's a new tab in this spreadsheet. And if you get to it before our next monthly call, answer the questions and put your information in there. And we can always leave space. I think folks can edit questions if they feel like it's useful information. I think a notes kind of end, tab on the end to just give additional information could be helpful. I'm just, I think sort of, to Kate's point, providing a resource for folks who may not always have the time or the ability or the capacity to get to all the meetings, to have a spot when you're like, oh, I've got a little bit of downtime and I need to circle back to starting a free store on my campus, or I've got students who want to start a free store on my campus. I know where I can go and find that information about free stores, right? Or like campus pantries. And I can see what other folks have done. And at the very least, if you're a campus lead or you're the campus coordinator, you don't necessarily have to do all the heavy lifting. You can say, hey, here's the contact at La Crosse, Green Bay, and Superior. Here are folks to connect with about starting a free store, what they did. I think it at least gives people a first place to, just kind of figure out how to start. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, I think it does. And I think that's the way to do it, with a tab each time, and you build it slowly rather than let's try to get every program that we possibly can. Because like you're basically saying, I have this issue with the OZ box system, so I'm bringing it to the meeting. Let's get everyone else's information on there. I think it's a great idea to do it that way.
And I think kind of how we decide what's the next tab. I mean, maybe at a monthly call, we say, who wants to throw out an idea, and it can just kind of be first come, first serve. Or if we get 3 or 4 campuses that are like, oh, I'm really struggling with dining operations, or I'm really struggling with waste management. Maybe that's the tab, right? And then I or others who are kind of willing to set up the question structure within the spreadsheet can kind of lay that out. And then the task before the next meeting is to fill that out if you have time. And then at the next call, if we want to spend 5 or 10 minutes just saying, did everybody get their updates in? Dave, stop it. I just think like providing a little bit of space and time and being intentional about these topic areas. And yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Like we don't need to put everything down at once. But I think just like getting things going, right? Getting stuff started. I find, just really only being in this role really in the last 2 years, you learn a lot really quickly. Like you're like, oh man, like they're doing this and they're doing it really well. Or like, oh man, I feel like they've got this figured out. Right. And again, it's like setting that precedent. You know, maybe they know how to jump through the hoops and figure out the procurement strategy, and they know the policy and all that stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna like pause for a second. Wes has got his hand up.
Just from a kind of administrative standpoint, I think if this is run through the communication and annual meeting or system coordination working group, I suppose would be the grander title on that one. You know, this seems like a pretty obvious overlap with that because it does tie into the monthly calls. It would be something that, you know, we could help coordinate the communication on, and then also be kind of the receiving point for any requests for some of these topics. So it's not just on you because you had the idea. You know, it makes sense for that to be part of a working group so that could be managed by a multiple people rather than just one. That's all.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that makes
Which
sense.
I know you'll be part of our working group next year, Brad. I'm sure you're eager to do that. So
yep. I'm like a sticky booger. I'm not going away. Do folks have other thoughts, comments? I mean, yeah, like I appreciated Kate bringing up like what do the schools need who have less support or who just have less time and wear multiple hats? I mean, it sounds like this is a kind of a resource space that folks can just go back to when they need to.
From UWL's perspective, I think it'd be very helpful. We don't always have time to. We don't have the time to like, go through and do a bunch of research always and figure out like what other schools are doing and what we should be doing. And so having somewhere where I can look and be like, hey, let's look at these ideas, see which ones are feasible, like in the short term. That would just save me and the other students who do a lot of work at UWL a lot of time, since it is all student run.
I think one thing I'll say maybe on the flip side of that, and that might even apply to Dusty and some others that can't be regulars to the calls and things like that. But if we know of other contacts or we know the contacts on your campuses, to make sure that we keep those people in the loop with monthly call invites and stuff like that. Like, Andrew, I had no idea that you were doing this stuff until basically I started bothering people at lacrosse and going through the registration form to try to get some idea who was going to be here to do an update. So, we weren't really sure who to talk to sometimes, and knowing that will help us kind of keep that communication line open. I know in the past, Superior's had different student organizations that have, risen and fallen depending on the year that have been involved. So, just kind of knowing who we can also reach out to is helpful, so we can, extend the olive branch of support proactively, as well as, obviously, and then, transitioning from student to student group especially is always a challenge. So kind of having that as part of your transition plan to reach out to our group and try to connect that way.
Well, it sounds like there's support for this, and yes, Wes, I am willing to remain part of system coordination working group communications, and I'm willing to kind of take the lead on this and get these tabs started and facilitate discussion at future monthly calls on this if folks are willing. So I think we've got a proposal for green funds to be the next tab and discussion item. So Missy, I may, if this sounds good, I can kind of take some information that I think you've already coalesced and put that into a tab for the next monthly call.
Yeah, so I think Missy is in another meeting right now, just kind of listening. But yeah, so Jim Bolter from UW Eau Claire was especially interested in learning more about the structure of different green funds around the university system. They have a very robust green fund at Eau Claire, but the rules of spending segregated fees, allocable and non-allocable, continue to kind of change, and navigating through that is some feedback that he was hoping to get for the next system call. So be prepared to discuss green funds on the next system call.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I in hearing folks talk about paying students or paying, people out of this, and kind of, I think in the previous request for this information, so the way the Green Fund works at UW-Oshkosh, and I don't know if this is sort of in alignment with, system policy or whatever, ours does not allow for payment of, people. And I don't know if that's just a UWO thing or a non-UWO thing, but we can fund projects. We just can't pay students or for staff. Do folks have other questions, things we want to circle back to from campus updates?
Yeah, I've got a question. I've got a couple of questions from the updates that I'd just like to at least get one started and then see if other people have stuff. But Emily and I were talking on the back end as Daniela was presenting about the Green Teacher Badge, and I would just love to hear a little bit more about what that program is, how it works, how it got started. It seems pretty unique, so I just love a little bit more explanation about what that is and how it came to be.
Sure. I'm gonna share a link in the chat with more information on it, but essentially it was an idea that came from our Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning. So yeah, they put together kind of a questionnaire focusing a lot on kind of like reduced printing, but also encouragement of things like, having a reusable coffee mug, how are folks commuting, and it's a point-based system. So if you reach a certain threshold of answering questions, then, you're bronze, silver, gold. I can share, let me pull up the website, because it has a link. You can download the questions. You can see a little bit of like how it was implemented, but it's fairly simple, straightforward. I'm hoping that we can expand on it a little bit. We were sort of forced to rename it because at UWGB, apparently badges have a very specific meaning with our continuing ed folks, and how we've set it up does not qualify. So we'll be restructuring it a bit, or at least renaming it to start. I want to break it out so that there's recognition for each individual action, rather than having to meet a certain threshold before you get recognition. So the current concept that I'm hoping we grow into is having like ribbons for each individual item. And then once you reach a certain threshold, you get the award, which is now called a badge. So just trying to incentivize and encourage folks, but also find ways, with maybe the ribbons being more specific. Right now, part of the idea is like people can use this badge and put it in their syllabi to kind of promote that they're doing things. But if it's broken out individually, I think that might encourage folks to think about those specific actions, as opposed to kind of like this black box of, an award that doesn't really tell somebody on the surface what's going on behind that. So other questions, or does that kind of answer mostly? All right, great.
Danielle, I can't see the link. I'm not sure if you shared it yet.
Not yet, because I was having trouble talking and searching.
No worries. Other folks with questions from campus updates or discussion items?
I can maybe briefly follow up on Danielle's question in the chat. That it's an interesting question about the revolving funds. You know, maybe Tony knows a little bit more about this. I don't deal directly with utility budgets myself, but essentially the utility funds have been depooled, which means we get allocations that would then, you know, essentially put us on the hook for any overages and utility costs, or, you know, allow us to keep savings for any, you know, underspending in the utility budget, which would, in theory, I would think, set us up to be able to set up some kind of revolving fund internally by campus, which that wouldn't have been possible before because the money would have went back to system into the pool, or would have been drawn out of the pool. Is that right, Tony? Is that kind of how it's set up now?
Yes. And Brian, you know, jump in if you know something that I don't know about Eau Claire, but in the past, there has been pushback from student governance on the student seg fees, the green fund being used for projects that, you know, saved energy, but then in turn, the money was not returned to student benefit of some sort. So the idea then that, you know, let's say the students funded an LED lighting conversion in a, you know, in a general academic building, or we're considering that, it was decided that since that money was not being returned to students, that use of green fund was not appropriate. It was at one time determined appropriate to use that money to do lighting retrofits in PR buildings, like, you know, residence halls and so on, because ultimately that money and the financial impact of that does directly benefit students. So there are differences of opinion. Also, I know that the green fund money in Eau Claire has been used for funding student positions, whether they be internships through the Student Office of Sustainability. There was talk for using that money for other positions potentially. But in general, it seems that there's quite a bit of latitude how a campus would decide to use their green funds. But I think ultimately, if there was a challenge to it, there would be some higher authority, either at systems or at state government, as to whether that was appropriate for use of student seg fees. I don't know if that answers the question. Other campuses may have different experience than what I've been involved with. And I don't know, Brian, if you have, maybe you've been involved in more of those conversations recently than I have, but that's the way I've seen it. Jake, you seem to maybe have some opinion about that too, but.
I just to put my 2 cents in, our Vice Chancellor and actually Jim Bolter is going to be talking to system legal this afternoon in regards to seg fees and how they see using it. Because we get, maybe, I don't know, you know, so I don't know for sure if there's any really set in stone way, but we're going to try to get some clarification. So we'll see what comes out of that discussion.
I see Alex from Madison has his hand up. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, we don't have my video on. I'll just want to follow up to something Wes said about the utility funds. Just take this a little example, because we've had some success very recently here on our campus, where last fiscal year we did have an overage in our utility budget. I mean, we underspent what our budget was, so we had extra funds. And our office, Josh, who is not here, unfortunately, led the charge on advocating that those dollars should be used for investments in efficiency and renewable energy to set us up for the future. So while not officially a revolving fund type structure, the goal is to use it for some of these investments, maybe set us up for that in the future. So we are in the process of trying to make that work on our campus.
And forgive me if this was already said and I just missed it taking notes. So with the 109 distribution, I mean, is that the plan, that the campuses retain anything that isn't spent?
Yes, and conversely, if they spend too much, they're on the hook for coming up with the money from some other part of the budget. So The state is washing its hands of that. And so anyway, yeah, it works both ways, but how that money would be spent is going to be completely dependent on what any local campus leadership administration decides to use that money for. It can be put back into the general fund. It can be used for academic programs. It can be used to hire any sort of positions, or conceivably the idea of using it to continue reduction in energy usage. And the problem is most energy reduction projects are pretty expensive and would be sort of difficult to fund directly out of an overage, depending on how big that was. But in most cases, maybe relatively small things like lighting retrofits could be done. But my understanding is that it's completely up to each institution as to how they decide to spend that money.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. I also was told that Whitewater gets a blank check this year because we just built our heating plants and had a bunch of cost increases based on the fact that we're self-generating for the first time in 20 years. So I'm at the point where I'm almost ready to encourage people to leave their lights on to run up our energy utility bill this year, so that next year we can actually get the allocation to cover us worst case scenario. It's kind of weird.
Shame, 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 shame upon you, Wes.
Just breaking a couple eggs to make the omelet, Tony. That's all I'm doing.
I just want to add, there's been a little bit of a lack of clarity on how your budget is set. The rule of thumb is that it's a 3-year rolling average.
No, my understanding is that it's a set number that was based on a 3-year average, which seems a little crazy in my opinion. I think I mentioned yesterday to somebody anyway, that I was reading over this report of energy usage for state facilities. And if you look at our campuses, there's a pretty wide range of measured EUIs based on this energy report, which apparently comes out every year from the Wisconsin State Department of Energy, whatever in the heck that is. But a report is put together by some outside agency it's completely based on utility purchases of electricity, and then also fuel purchases through the state contracts that are negotiated by the state. So if you take all that up and you convert those fuels and kilowatt hours into BTUs, normalize it by the number of square feet in each facility based on something. I'm not quite sure what it's based on, because the numbers I see on the UW Eau Claire report are not the same numbers that I see when I look at our facilities building by building information. But at any rate, the ranges of EUI performance for our campuses from a total campus standpoint range from about 100 kBTUs per square foot per year to something over 225 kBUs per square foot per year. So the utility allocation is not based at all on any sort of target of performance. It's based strictly on historical, and that was studied for several years before somebody finally said, well, we can't figure out a better way to do it, so we're just going to base it on history.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that report's put out by the Office of Energy Innovation. That's Megan Levy that handles that, consultant Craig. There's been a lot of errors in that report that John and I have been working on for 10 years, because 25% of our actual square footage doesn't show up because it's off the main plant. And there's a history of the UW system of doing that report to report on the main plant. So there's some issues there, but I just want to clarify that, because even how the budget is set is a mystery a little bit, and that affects obviously your spend over time. So you have to know how the budget is set in order to know how you can tackle savings. We've been having these discussions on our campus, but it's still a little bit of a black box around here as if we're going to be able to keep some of the savings, and we have a plan for implementing that around energy efficiency and retro commissioning. But I think I have heard like some campuses is much easier and to keep those savings and to do things with them, and others it's a complete mystery. So yeah.
This has been great conversation, folks. It is a little after 10:30. I think what we can do is end this session